Hey everybody, it's Matt Demers here from LolKing doing an interview with Steven Snoopeh Ellis on what I think is one of our few off days from the Season 3 World Championship. We're here at USC. Just afterwards, the players were doing a whole bunch of kind of fan meetups, fan photos, fan signatures, that kind of stuff. And just, caught up with Snoopeh. I'm going to ask him a couple questions. So obviously, these things are really kind of cool because you get to really interact with fans. I'm guessing you've done, your fair share of them. So were you ever at one point nervous to kind of, let everyone come up to you, I suppose?
Well, you kind of get used to it now, like after so many events and things like that, you get used to it. But the first one was kind of intimidating was I was at Vancouver, and I actually arranged that all myself. Like we went out there, and it was in a lecture hall in front of about 300 people. And in that scenario, when you see 300 people and you can make eye contact with them all, that's kind of scary because like everything you say, you can see the reaction. When you're in front of thousands, you can't see the reaction, or you're like broadcasting to a camera, you don't see the reaction. So that was probably like one of the more intimidating things. It went really well, but it was still pretty intimidating.
What's kind of the weirdest thing you've ever had to sign?
The weirdest thing I ever had to sign? I actually once had to sign a baby at an MLG, where I signed a baby. Not like on the skin or anything, it was just on the clothes. There was also at Worlds, semi-finals a couple of days ago, I actually had to sign a leg. It was a prosthetic leg. First I've ever done that as well, so it was pretty cool. But other than that, like there's always like, there's boobs, there's stomachs, there's pretty much like everything.
It's a hard job, is what you're saying. It's a really hard job.
It's a hard job.
I actually saw a picture of Crepo. I think Crepo posted that on Twitter the other day with the prosthetic leg. That guy's got some dedication, let's put it that way. Speaking of the tournament, you got I've seen you around pretty much every day. What has kind of been your overall impressions, I guess, now that we've kind of moved towards like the global stage?
It's been really impressive, actually. It's really interesting to see a team like Fnatic do really well, and then relate that to how close the EU split actually was, because it was insanely close, and Fnatic potentially could not have even been here. They might have been out of it, like 2 games, and they could have been out of the LCS entirely. So it's a very interesting dynamic to see them doing so well. It does look like they put a lot of work into that. I'm not going to discredit that, but it's been a great tournament, and sad they didn't actually make it past the semis, but it was a close series against Royal. I think they could have took it to the 5th game, but a couple of mistakes led to them losing the game, and then Royal just, like all the Asian teams especially, once you make a mistake, they capitalize on it really well. So
that was kind of one of the interesting things that I picked up anyway going into this tournament, was that after you guys finished last place in the All-Star tournament, people were very quick to discount EU, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, Gambit and Fnatic just knocked out Ozone, Vulcan, and they're going to be progressing to quarters. So do you have any kind of like EU pride over that?
Yeah, there's a little bit of EU pride because I think All-Stars wasn't really representative of Europe. It was a very kind of disorganized team. There wasn't like the synergy there and things like that. So I don't think it was a real representation of our international power. And I think it was nice to see Gambit and Fnatic get a chance to come out here and actually like show what Europe can do.
So one of the things that you've been doing here at the tournament is that you've been on the analyst desk, and of course, like, you are known for being particularly informative on your stream, that kind of thing, and especially, I guess, at these fan meets, you get asked questions about the game. So how tough is it as you as a professional to kind of, I wouldn't say dumb things down, but put them in words that like the layman player can understand?
It's actually a very interesting question. It happens very often when I meet new people and they ask you, like, what do you do? Where are you flying to? Like, you meet someone on a plane, for example, and then you go through this process of explaining what you're actually doing. And then you have to dumb down what esports is. You have to dumb down what like professional gaming is and things like that. So it's kind of innate when it comes to the game. It's just the same kind of process. You just kind of dumb down what you're talking about. And like everyone that watches the game, it's quite easy to relate to some of the things that I would say. You don't have to talk about like specific strategies or anything like that. It's very easy to relate to because so many people play it. It's quite a casual entry game. It's hard to master, but it's casual entry. So you can break down things relatively easily to the average viewer.
So here's the hardest thing that I have when introducing League of Legends to like people who've never heard of it before. How do you describe like the map? Because like the concept of the game, I try to say, instead of a tug of war, you're just trying to push to your enemy base. But do you have like any kind of, I suspect you've done this so many times, you kind of have like a script. Like how do you explain, I guess, the premise of the game to people? And I guess in the simplest terms.
I think it's very much depending on the person you're talking to, because like they have their different perception of games.
Yeah.
So like you might relate to like a tower defense game where you have to break through the barriers of these different towers and there's 3 lanes. There's 4 how can I get this right? 3 towers in each lane and then 2 in the main base. 11 towers in total. And you have to kind of work your way through these towers. There's map objectives that you can take all over the map. Typically you'll have 2 person in one lane, 2 people in one lane, 1 person mid lane, 1 person top lane. And then you have your jungler who can roam around and influence the map all over. I think it's very much relatable to like a tower defense where you have to break down objectives and then get to the final goal at the end. I think it's like the simplest way to kind of break down League of Legends.
I think the easiest thing now is now that more people are kind of getting into casual games, there are games that are like breaking down like a MOBA like League of Legends or a tower defense game into like their simplest elements, and they tend to like do really well. Like Puzzles and Dragons, Candy Crush are just like Bejeweled, only they've made it really simple. So when I tried to explain League of Legends to a friend anyway, they just had to be like, oh, it's like Happy Wars, which I've never heard of. Apparently it's on the Xbox, but apparently it's just like League of Legends, only just very simplified. So it's kind of cool that everyone can be included in gaming nowadays. Are you finding that, like, especially with how big the Season 3 World Championships are, you're seeing a lot more kind of people who you never really thought would be into gaming kind of like showing up, I suppose?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's tons of people. We had a guy from, he fights in, it's not Bojido, I think it's called, it's a Brazilian fighting. One of the champions of that, was a friend of one of the rioters. He came out here and was like, yeah, I played a couple of games of League. That guy's like, he's a champion fighter, and he's playing League of Legends in his spare time. So there's such a diverse population of people now playing the game. It's really interesting to see. And when I meet people in airports, if I have like a Riot shirt or a Snoopeh shirt on or an EG shirt on, and they come up to me and start talking about the game, they're like, yeah, I know, like my friend plays that game and stuff. It's so popular now across the globe. It's like fascinating to see the growth in the last 2 years especially.
It's one of those things where you kind of don't understand the scope of it until you see, like, I wasn't here last season or last finals, but like seeing the Galen Center, and you're like, oh, how are they going to top this for Staples, right? I actually thought that was really interesting about that, the fighter you were talking about, because there are like a couple. I think there's an NBA player and an NFL player that stream League, so it's almost like there's people. You look at those athletes or those celebrities, and you almost don't expect them to kind of be on that level almost, like, and then how is it like when they come up to you and they think you're like cool, they think you're like the celebrity on the pedestal kind of thing? How does that feel?
It's pretty interesting actually, though I don't actually know any NFL or NBA players, but when you meet someone that's quite established, it doesn't have to necessarily be a sports athlete, but it could be like a CEO or something that comes up to you and they're really hooked on the game, and they're so passionate about playing League, but they suck, and then they look up to you. Like, these guys are well established guys working for like so many years, like doing incredibly well for themselves, and they come up to you and they're like, yo man, I really appreciate, like, I kind of idolize you and how good you are at this game. That's a bit freaky. Like Brandon Beck especially, like the CEO of Riot Games, hugely and incredibly successful, but he's so down to earth, the coolest guy you'll ever meet. And he like looks up to me and like asks me questions about the game and like what can he do to get better and all this. So it's a great interaction with the people that you would necessarily put above you. They're like so down to earth and want to get to know you and things like that. It's cool to see.
I think I saw on your social media the other day, or I think it was last night or whatever, you got to shoot some guns with Brandon Beck and Ocelote. How was that?
That was a lot of fun actually. I hadn't shot a gun before, and it was pretty crazy. Me and Carlos were like kind of overwhelmed at first, but it was a ton of fun. I think Carlos was actually better than me at shooting a gun, which is kind of scary. I think it's something a Spanish thing. I don't know. It's whatever.
And neither of you are AD carries, so you can kind of like forgive each other for missing a couple targets, that kind of stuff. When I shot a gun, I went with my dad for Father's Day to shoot a gun, and I think especially as a gamer, you've shot so many guns virtually, and then when you actually shoot one, you're like, I would never want to get hit with one of these ever, or like ever at all. So kind of, maybe this is going a little off topic, but how is it kind of like shooting a gun and being a gamer?
It's hard. The funny thing was actually, we went in and I was telling Brandon about how I play Counter-Strike and things like that. So we picked up the Glock, we picked up the Sigma, the AR-67 I think it was. So they picked up all these kind of Counter-Strike guns when we went in, so we could like shoot the Counter-Strike guns. This was like Brandon's philosophy. And it was really interesting. You have like a deep respect for a weapon, and for me it's kind of scary to think that every American household can actually like have one of these guns. Pretty scary for me, just to know how powerful they are and how you literally end a life so easily. And I guess they have their reasons and stuff like that, but I knew like a deep respect for guns now that I didn't have when you're playing like virtually.
I would call you guys nerds for getting Counter-Strike weapons, but then again, I'm working and interviewing League of Legends players for a living. I guess a couple last questions. You were saying that when a lot of people are watching you, like 1,000 people in front of you, they all kind of blur into one audience. So when you're on the analyst desk, how hard is it to like forget that literally hundreds of thousands of people are watching you?
On the analyst desk, it's a little bit different because like you're on the spotlight in a sense. Like what you're saying has to be very like on point. When you're broadcasting like an interview, you can really say what you want in an interview because your own opinion. But when you're broadcasting like an analyst desk and it's like picks and bans, like it's your job essentially, so you have to get it right. So there's a little bit more pressure on the analyst desk than there is like in a normal interview.
Do you have a favorite game of the tournament or favorite kind of like clash of teams so far this tournament?
I think my favorite was probably the Fnatic Cloud9 series, just because it was Europe against NA, you know, and then like the Cloud9 hype train and all that thing. It was nice to see them like actually going head to head. That's probably my favorite kind of series. I wouldn't say it's like the best quality of gameplay, but my favorite series to actually watch.
I think that's one of my favorite things anyways. It's not necessarily like the technical matchup, it's more about just the story and the personalities being played. And I just like that it went 3 games because especially the first day of the semifinals, a full 5 games, we were all sitting in that players lounge being like hyped and everything like that. I guess again, kind of wrapping up the interview, what's it like kind of sitting in that lounge, not necessarily doing anything on the analyst desk or whatever, but sitting with other pros and being like, oh, this is what he's doing, or providing different perspective?
Yeah, it's actually really funny. And the thing is, every pro does not share the same opinion. We have completely different opinions about pretty much everything. So it's really interesting to see like you're calling out someone, but you're like, no, it's like actually right if we respond to this. And like pros just have so much like back and forth bittering about the stupidest stuff. It's pretty amusing actually. We're all good friends though. It's like a great atmosphere backstage, and that's what I love about coming to events is the atmosphere. Like you just meet all these different people, and you see like all the pros, and we all just chill and we all hang out. Even though we're so competitive and we hate each other when it comes to actually playing the game, but outside of the game we're all great friends, and it's a really nice atmosphere to be in events.
That's really good to hear anyway. It kind of gives us a little bit of an insight into the behind the scenes camaraderie and that kind of stuff. Is there anything else you wanted to add just before I let you go?
I just want to thank you, Matt, for the interview. It's great being out here at Worlds. I hope you guys enjoy the World Finals. They're actually going to be amazing. I can't wait to get to Staples and check it out. It's going to blow your minds. It really is.
Well, you heard it from Snoopeh. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to follow us and check out more of our Worlds coverage, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, rather, and you can follow us at LolKing.net on Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at @MattDemers. I believe you're Snoopeh, just Snoopeh, on Twitter. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.